Welcome, everybody, to Visionality's Building Forward. My name is Emily Barony, and I'm the founder and CEO of Visionality. And we are joined today by the amazing, wonderful, brilliant guest star, Nico Gervasoni. And we are so happy to have you. So, y'all know the drill. Big topic, 25 minutes or less. So, we are going to start our timers. You ready?
Ready when you are. I have it on my computer.
3, 2, 1, go.
I'm gonna. Sorry, real quick. It was a soft G, not a hard G, but that's okay.
Give it to me again.
Gervasoni.
Gervasoni. See, Nico Gervasoni.
And this is a good example of like where to improve stewardship in action. And it's okay because I've definitely done this. Which is extra embarrassing as somebody with a last name that is hard to pronounce. Pronouncing other people's last names wrong is super embarrassing.
Yeah, sure is.
With that start, good morning, everyone. As Emily mentioned, my name's Nico. I'm a project manager here at Visionality. I've been here a year and a half now. Joined October 2020. It was a big jump in the middle of the pandemic, but I'm very glad I took it, and I'm very glad to be here. I see some people here from kind of all over. I see a couple UC Santa Barbara folks, which is great because I came from higher ed. I came from UCLA. So that higher ed context is very familiar to me, and I hope hope some of my experiences will be relevant for you today. And so we're going to talk about donor stewardship. 10 creative minutes a day is the title. We're obviously going to get to it in a little more than 23 minutes, but I think the biggest thing we need to do before we start is kind of lay down some parameters of what stewardship is. And so I'll leave it to the group, and you can drop it in the chat. You can shout it out, whatever you're most comfortable with. But asking, how do you define stewardship? It's a very nebulous term. I have some ideas on what that means, but I'll ask you, what is donor stewardship?
Love it.
I would definitely agree, making your donors feel appreciated.
Thank you, Stacey.
100%. Thanks, Stacey. Give it a few more seconds. But even with that, that is a great place to start. Oh, thank you, Meredith. Building relationships and helping donors feel connected to the mission. Agree 100% with that as well. So I think we kind of get a sense of what stewardship is. What I think is most important to do as a start. Oh yeah, thanks, Katie. Donor engagement throughout the year. Agree with that as well. And we will get to touch on all of that. What I think where we can start with stewardship is that it has a definite starting point, but no end point. And I think that starting point is once a gift is booked, whether someone gives $1, $100, $1,000, $100,000, like that's the starting point. That's the starting line for stewardship. But where it gets kind of interesting and sort of nebulous is that there's no end point. And I know some folks in here know about the donor cycle and how stewardship kind of folds back into cultivation. I think that's where it gets hard to define sometimes, that those two things kind of move side by side and can often look the same. But yes, I would agree that it's to make your donors feel appreciated and help them feel connected to the mission, kind of the work they're doing, kind of reminding them that they made a good choice with their resources to support you. And that's the overarching goal of stewardship. So then stewardship, obviously, like I mentioned, feels similar to cultivation, and they should. Both of the messages can kind of feel the same, sound the same. Thank you for supporting this project or this scholarship with your gift. Here's what we're looking forward to doing in the future. We hope we can keep you engaged and kind of keep you plugged into what we're doing there. And you can start the cycle all over again to cultivate for that next gift. So when I was thinking about sort of 10 minutes a day, I use 10 minutes a day as a framework because stewardship is something that's hard to define. And so it can easily get lost in all of our to-do lists, and we have a ton of them. I'm definitely guilty of this as well. We all know that it's important to be grateful for the people that support us, but it's very easy to get caught up in other things. And like, that's not a criticism. That's just sort of reality. We can acknowledge it, kind of, work our way back. And I think it's important to acknowledge also that we will never be complete with stewardship. Like, we're always going to have donors to thank, and more people to talk to. So we're always going to be playing a little bit of catch up, but I think there are some things we can do day by day to kind of rebuild foundations to make stewardship stronger in the long run.
Well, and Nico, beyond that, the technology is evolving, right? So now one of the things that we love doing with our clients is using video software, and that is new, and it was not a thing 10 years ago. So in addition to continually building out a program or customizing a program based on the needs of your donors, even just like the technology is changing around stewardship.
Absolutely. And we'll touch on some of those probably later on, just some ideas that we've seen that we've had success with. But yeah, it's always changing. So we should never feel like we've completed stewardship, because if we did, then we're missing something for sure. Um, so let's go ahead and jump into to sort of, now we know what stewardship is. We know it's kind of a never-ending task. Kind of identifying for our different organizations what's appropriate for yours. Um, so I think there are some factors that we need to take into account when we're thinking about stewardship for your organization. And I defined it by three things. It'll look different depending on your organization, the size, the scope, the mission, the kind of gifts that you bring in, and they're all different because we just have organizations of different sizes, and the donors. Um, so it feels sort of kind of obvious to say that's all customizable, but that is true. But the good news is that leaves us a lot of different ways to sort of um, pick and choose what works, what may not work, what will work for a donor giving $100 a month to UCSB to this specific scholarship versus somebody giving $5,000 a month to Girls Inc. to support, this sort of capital campaign or what have you. So a lot of different options, a lot of different ways we can go, but the organization, the gift, and the donor are the three different avenues to walk down. So we'll start with by thinking about the organization. And I think the first way to do that is kind of figuring out and being honest with what your budget is, kind of what your resources are that are available to you. And they're all different. Budget can also include people and time. And so I'll actually give you an example of a time that I did not do this correctly. So I had a client, and one of the projects we had was creating a stewardship matrix for them, just kind of doing sort of this foundational work building from scratch. And I spent a whole lot of time and I got a lot of feedback on this really great matrix of like, okay, donor X giving at this level will get activities A, B, C, and D. And major donors will get A through X and all this stuff. And I worked super hard and I was super proud of it. And I presented it to my client, and they're like, Nico, this would take three people to do. We have one person who runs our database, who holds all the keys, who can do all this stuff. And so that was a really humbling moment of acknowledging, like, yeah, this is all great, but this is way beyond what they're capable of. And they're already doing as much as they can. So I had to go back and kind of modulate it and do what I could to fix it. So just sort of acknowledging that what we are, just what are the tools we have to work with. Even if you don't have a lot, there's still a lot you can do. And so Emily mentioned so that sort of video software, that is a great tool that I would recommend to just about everybody. But I do that with the caveat that it can take a lot of time. So one of our clients who used video software for their end of year campaign to both make the final push and to thank their donors, um, he was really meticulous about making sure the videos were spot on, and it took him a lot of time to re-record, write the script, shoot, didn't like it, redid it again. And I thought it would just be a one take and go, and I was wrong. And so it ended up working out, but it took a lot of time, it was really stressful. So just kind of acknowledging who you are and what you sort of have to work with, what might work for you. Because ultimately stewardship should be, obviously it's to make your donors feel connected, but it should be out of a place of something that's sustainable for you, right? So just kind of being honest with what you're working with and what you have at your disposal. Um, so then from there, we'll go into, yeah. So sorry, I lost my train of thought. So your organization, just being honest with what you have. Next, we'll move into the basics. So I think there are a couple non-negotiables that I think we would all agree on here. The first thing you should do after any gift, kind of by the end of that day, is to input it into your database. The person, any contact information, the amount, to what, that should not go unentered. Now, luckily, at some bigger places, that's kind of done automatically, so that is a huge blessing. But for other people, it can be super it could just be easily forgotten. Just data entry is not fun. There's a reason why people start out doing data entry. It's not the coolest, but it is super crucial. So just making sure your gift is in there, in your database by the end of the day.
Well, and like basics, right? So that is the entire focus of your first phase of your 10 minutes a day, is what are the basics and are you nailing them? Building out those systems, working the systems, improving the systems. So system number one is have a database, have standards for how to input information into the database. So you're putting like information with like information. What fields are not negotiable? And making sure that by the end of the day of the gift, it gets into the database. Until you have that happening, do not pass go. You don't get to do anything else. That's the only focus. And again, it's not fun. It's pretty boring. It's super tedious. And it is the foundation to a good stewardship program.
Correct. Yes. Thank you, Emily. Um, so then so once you do that, you've passed go. So sort of the three non-negotiable activities you can do, and I wouldn't recommend doing all three, but definitely at least one would be an immediate email saying thank you for your gift. You gave this much to this program. We're really excited to have your support. Here's what we're gonna do in the future. You could also send a thank you letter in the mail. My last stop before Visionality, that's what I did every week. Would because the person my boss really likes sending out letters, and so I was in charge of writing the letters and making sure that was all correct. Or the last thing would be to call them and say thank you. Try to leave a voicemail. See if you can chat them on the phone. Just saying thank you for your support. We super appreciate it. Kind of what you say will be up to you, but just one of those three things definitely needs to happen within a couple of days. No later than 2 weeks for the thank you letter, I think, and then for a phone call, probably within a week is ideal. So then the next part of your 10 minutes, and this is sort of a caveat specific to staff members who interact with board members in particular. So it's a little bit of a tangent, but I think one of the basics, so we talked about basics just now. The basics that you can do with your board is to really get them focused on stewardship as opposed to cultivation. Just get them really to understand that these are the basics, and without them, they can't do all the really high end, really cool kind of cultivation for the big events or the big sponsors or the big donors that they want to chase because they're interested in your mission. But just kind of making those bases really solid. So the example that I'll cite here that just happened last week is that we met with a client and they're building up a development committee on their board. And these are some really great people who are really engaged with the organization, some of them for multiple years, even trying to bring on new people. And one of them was talking about how, she hasn't gotten, and they have a membership structure, but she was going on about, and they need to raise a lot of money in a short period of time. Like there's a very urgent need for them. But she was going on about how, she's been a member for a while, but she didn't get her renewal last year. And someone else at the table was like, you know what? I didn't get that either. But yeah, at the same time, 5 minutes later, they were talking about this really massive event that they were going to have that they wanted to do and throw all the resources into. And so Emily and I piped up from saying, well, before doing that, why don't you focus on gathering back your members, reminding them, hey, your money that you've committed to us is due soon, or just kind of making them feel appreciated and thought about and cared for, because that will be a source of income that is sitting there that is ready to be deputized for your purposes that hasn't been touched yet because you're chasing other things. So just sort of getting them back onto the basics, reminding them what is already here in the house, thinking of like a parent who, we have food at home, that sort of thing. There's plenty of food here that boards can focus on instead of trying to go out for the very fancy meal. There's a lot here that we can, that you can identify.
And it's tough too, because it's not sparkle shiny. Like sending out membership renewals is not fun. And like you said, we have food at home. Like, let's eat the food at home first before we talk about going out to dinner.
Yeah.
I got Meredith with that joke. She thinks it's great.
All right. So then kind of moving away from that board specific tangent, and I need to pick up my pace. I'm going very slow. So for your next 10 minutes a day, so you thought about your organization. Now start to think about the gifts that you bring in and starting to build out levels and tiers based on your gift size. And I think A lot of organizations already do this sort of intuitively, but I think it's always good to kind of review them, make some tweaks. Maybe one year you're getting more gifts at this specific level as opposed to another. So just kind of seeing what the data is telling you and kind of making some adjustments from there. So always recommend pulling reports. I'm big on pulling any kind of reports and just seeing what the numbers tell you and kind of where you can make some change, where you can identify this tier as opposed to that tier. Um, Again, I'll emphasize sort of being realistic and being honest. So I'll go back to the example that I used of writing a really elaborate stewardship program for an organization that had an assistant, a coordinator, but there was only one assistant. So just kind of doing, kind of overestimating their capabilities and just kind of being honest about yours. And if you don't have a lot of capability, that's okay. There's still plenty you can do. Like there are a lot of basics that you can cover that can make people feel appreciated. Um, and then the biggest thing with that, once you look at your report, you kind of see what the tiers are. You can kind of throw out some ideas, and maybe we do this for the $100 a month folks. Maybe we do this for the $500. You can not be afraid to start something, try it, and see if it works for you. See if people are responding, and if they're not, make some adjustments. There's no one size fits all stewardship program, and I even think if you do try to get into that model of doing something just because we've always done it, then you can kind of get stuck and people will get bored. Um, I've run into that in the past. So then you've kind of seen what the data is telling you, kind of made some judgments based on different tiers, and you've committed to trying this for this tier and that for that tier. You can start to then think about your segmenting your donors, and I think this is especially relevant to major donors. Whatever that tier is for your organization, that could be $500, that could be $5 million, could be $500,000, whatever you define as a major donor. I think this is where you can start to get into customizing stewardship based on them specifically. Because some of your donors love being put in the spotlight, love being recognized for their philanthropy and being seen as supporting the mission. And some people would rather chew on glass than to speak in public. They'd rather just give you your check or give you their check, know that it's going to a good place, and not be heard from. So that's where beyond this 10 minutes, if there's one thing that takes more than 10 minutes, it would probably be this relationship building. I'm getting to know people who want to be acknowledged or would rather stay the next thing closest to anonymous, where they can get their name printed in something at most, but they never want to be seen by more than a couple of people. um, so yeah, I think with this kind of goes back to the lack of a one size fits all stewardship program. Um, I think this is the most important place where you shouldn't have a one size fits all, where it should be different for every person. Um, so before I came to Visionality, I was at UCLA, and we had donors who gave to scholarships who wanted the red carpet rolled out for them. They wanted to have parking paid for. They wanted to meet the students that they were supporting. They wanted to meet the new dean that we just had in our graduate school. They wanted to do all this stuff, and there were a couple donors that I can think of who wanted nothing more than like a phone call, just saying, thank you for your support. They could kind of time it at a certain time of the year, and they're like, okay, that sounds great. And then 2 weeks later, there was a check in the mail to re-up their support for a scholarship. So it was just all different. But the most important thing was making them feel appreciated, how they want to be spoken to. And so one last thing I'll mention is that you can offer all these sorts of things, but I think what should be important throughout this process is asking for feedback. So the way we got to figure out that donor X wanted nothing more than report on the students that he and his wife were funding with their fellowship was just we asked them, we offered them, hey, we're hosting this event, we'd love to have you there, and they said no. Okay, no problem. Or they wanted to have their name printed in our quarterly newsletter or a magazine, and they're like, yeah, that's fine. And so we did that, and we didn't do some other things, but we just sort of figured out what they're looking for. But the only way you can do that is just by asking and just being like, hey, how often do you want to hear from us? In what ways do you want to hear from us? And just kind of figuring out what they're like. And obviously that will come with time as you build a relationship with them. You get to know them some more, and you cultivate them for more gifts. Again, that's how cultivation stewardship kind of work together, but just being honest and asking them.
Well, and please, goodness, put that in the donor database. Please, please, please. As fundraisers, one of the most important um, and honest things that we can do is make sure that we're building a relationship between the donor and the organization, not between the fundraiser and the organization. And so it's really important to put that nuanced preference into your donor database, because if you move on to a different opportunity, it's really important that institutional knowledge stays with your organization.
Yeah, thank you, Emma. And that's a great point about building the relationship with the organization, because people change jobs, fundraisers go from one place to another, and so it would be easy to leave the pieces there where someone else can pick them up, and no one's missed a beat. And I see a question in the chat from Meredith, which is great because she beat us to the thing to do next, which is what are you guys asking your donors? So Meredith asks, when do you ask people? Do you have an annual survey? Do you do it when you call to thank them for gifts? And my answer to that is I've done both in my experience. We've done annual surveys for folks, and this is a great way to, if your database needs some cleanup, you can tell them, we haven't heard from you in a while, or we just want to make sure we have your information correct. So you let them enter that, but then you also ask them, like, do you want our monthly newsletter? Do you not? Do you want to? You kind of pick and choose. So Meredith, that wasn't a great answer to your question, because I have done both before, and I've seen it done both ways successfully. Um, but again, I don't think it's bad to try out a survey. It takes some time, but it could, if you get a lot of responses, then you know that people look forward to it. Or you can just take an extra 30 seconds in your call to them, thanking them for their gift. Ask, how do you want to hear from me?
Yeah, or two, like have a couple stewardship opportunities in your back pocket. And so you're calling the donor, hey, we just want to make sure we have the most up-to-date information. Great, great, great. Also, I have these 3 opportunities. Are any of them interesting to you? And so maybe they're very different opportunities. So again, you can start to indicate preference of, do you want the big flashy red carpet tour? Do you want to have a one-on-one with our board president? Do you want to meet someone who's the recipient of your gift? Whatever.
Yeah,
What else do y'all ask your donors? Put it in the chat, come off mute. We want to hear what's working for each of you. Also, 5-minute warning, my friend. Oh, Meredith, good luck. Meredith says they're switching CRMs. Good luck. Call us when you want to cry, because it's tough. All right, let's keep it moving, Nico.
sure.
So tell me about frequent donors, like a monthly or recurring donor. Do I need to call them 700 times a year? Like, what does that program look like?
Yeah. So the answer to your question is no. You don't need to call them every month. Um, what feels right to me in terms of frequency to reach out to them is probably about once a quarter. Um, just letting them know, thank you for your gifts the last couple of months. Here's what you've supported at what amount, um, and here's what we're up to. In the last couple of months, we've done X, Y, and Z. In the next few months, we're doing A, B, and C. Your ongoing support will be meaningful as we do those things. We'd love to get engaged with you more. Here's how you can contact us. So I would definitely um, recommend, definitely not every month. Maybe for a tax receipt purposes for accounting, those sorts of things. But in terms of that more relational contact from you, I would see into a couple times a year. That feels right to me.
Excellent. So to sum up, these are sort of the 4 phases of your 10 minutes a day program, right? The first phase is setting the budget, just so you know what you're working with, and be really honest about it, because a good stewardship program is a sustainable stewardship program. So just where you are today is not where you're going to be in a year. Just be honest about where you are, and that's okay, and build a program that fits within your limitations. So that's your first phase of 10 minutes a day. Second phase of 10 minutes a day is nailing the basics. So those were like the database, the thank you phone call and letter. And part of that is educating your board about why stewardship is more important than cultivation and getting them engaged in that stewardship process. Third phase of 10 minutes a day is building out your level. So pulling that donor database report and just starting to build out some structure, and your structure is going to change. You're going to learn a lot from it, and it's a really evolving process. And then the fourth set of 10 minutes a day is working on segmentation and really deepening and I'd say personalizing those relationships. Did we do it?
Yeah, we did. According to my 25 minutes, I think you may have given me a few more than but yeah, those are the 10 minutes. I think one last recommendation I would make is that I don't think you need to do steps 1 through 4 all in 10 minutes. Like there are going to be some days where item 1 in setting your budget and knowing what you're working with is going to take up your entire 10 minutes, and that's okay. And some days you're going to skip 2 and 4, go back to 3. Like, no 2 days are the same. You might be able to anticipate kind of a rhythm, but I would, yeah, if you can get to all 4 in 10 minutes, then good on you. And also, maybe we can sprucing up that report a little bit in step 3. But yeah, just four quick ways to improve your stewardship in 10 minutes a day, either at the beginning of the day, the end of the day, over lunch. I don't know. But yeah.
So we want to hear from y'all who are on the webinar. What are you guys up to? What has worked really well? What has not worked really well as you're building in your donor stewardship problem or donor stewardship program? And like, are there challenges that we can workshop? Between all of us, we have an incredible set of experiences in fundraising and donor stewardship. And so share some successes with me. Like what has gone really well?
I'll share something quickly. My name is Stacy. I'm with UCSB Student Affairs, and my colleague Marissa is on the call as well. And I just wanted to thank you for that phrase of like, we have food at home. It's so helpful because in my role in the last 2 years, we have not been thorough with our renewals, which are so basic. It's so basic. And thanks to Marissa, our new assistant, this year we've been able to lock that system in. And she just gave us a report this morning that $3,200 came in from the first round of letters that went out. And so it's just that reminder that these very basic things are basic for a reason, and they feel like maybe they're not as flashy and important, and they're so important because people will just drop off. If you don't keep talking to them, they just fall away because they don't feel like they're important. And some of these people maybe even haven't been stewarded that well, but just getting the reminder letter was enough for them to go, oh yeah, I really still care about that program. So thank you for emphasizing that.
Yes, good job.
Absolutely. Yeah, would love to hear stories about great assistants. I started as an assistant, so I am extremely sympathetic to the cause and making sure stewardship gets rolling assistant level. So Marissa, shouts out to you, even though you're not on video. That's okay.
What else? Who else has had a recent success?
We borrowed something we saw from another nonprofit where they sent out branded note cards to their donors. And so we designed and created our own branded note cards and sent them out to our major donors to thank them for their support and to be connected and to give them an opportunity to connect with people that they haven't reached out to in a while. And we got one of our note cards sent back to us with a gift in it, which was not our intention at all, but was a nice surprise.
Well, and I have seen these note cards. So Meredith is with Women's Economic Ventures, and they help people start and grow businesses in the Tri-Counties. And so what they did, again, stewardship has to be mission focused. And so they collected stories from their clients and created these beautiful, like mission true note cards, like thank you cards with client statements and information and a nice photo that then got sent to the donor so that I could send it out to somebody. And they were just so well done. I love a stewardship and a cultivation moment that is like so perfectly on mission. So good job.
Yeah, big props to you. I love that. And that's a good example of someone doing the step number one really well, kind of knowing your budget, because like printing materials like that, it's not cheap, but it, if you do it right and you do it well, it's a good investment. And it's starting to pay back if people are going to send you checks along with the postcard back. So yeah, that's a real good example of someone doing step one real well.
Yeah, way to go. What else? Does anyone else have a success that they want to share with the group?
Or any questions we can workshop together?
Yeah. Perhaps we've solved it.
Yeah, we pushed the boulder up the hill just that little bit further.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you for spending your Wednesday morning with us. We do this once a month, usually the first Wednesday of the month. If you want to guest star like Nico did, email us. We want to hear from you. Y'all are the experts in fundraising, and so we'd love to have a conversation about what's working really well in your organization so we can just share the love around. So thank you all very much for your time. Nico, thank you very much. This was really wonderful. Have a great week, everyone.
Thanks, y'all. Take care. Good luck out there.